Welcome to an exploration of the moments that fundamentally altered the course of a nation. We delve into 20 pivotal events in American history. These are the turning points that reshaped the United States. This journey provides a concise overview of America's evolution. It covers history from its colonial roots to the modern era. These defining moments include both triumphs and tribulations. Collectively, these events forged America's identity. They significantly influenced America's political landscape. They also determined America's role on the global stage. Understanding these moments offers a valuable framework for understanding the U.S. It highlights the complex and often contradictory forces that have shaped the nation. These events are the bedrock of the American story. Our journey begins with the American Revolution. This was a watershed moment in human history. Colonists fought for independence from British rule. The struggle was fueled by ideals of liberty and self-governance. This fight birthed the United States of America. It established principles of democracy. It also established principles of individual rights. These principles became cornerstones of the new nation. The revolution was a radical act of self-determination. Following the war came the Constitutional Convention. This was a critical step in nation-building. It led to the subsequent ratification of the Constitution. The Constitution laid the groundwork for a stable government. It defined the structure of the federal system. It also defined the powers of the federal system. This document established a framework for governance. That framework continues to shape American politics today. It created a system of checks and balances. The debates surrounding its creation were intense. They reflected the diverse interests of the states. The compromises made were crucial for unity. The Bill of Rights was later added. It guaranteed fundamental freedoms. This further solidified the principles of individual liberty. The early republic faced many challenges. Establishing a national economy was vital. Defining the relationship between states and the federal government was key. The presidency of George Washington set precedents. His farewell address warned against factions and foreign entanglements. These early years were formative. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 dramatically expanded the nation's territory. It doubled the size of the United States. This acquisition opened vast new lands for settlement. It also raised complex questions about governance. The purchase was a bold move by President Thomas Jefferson. It secured control of the vital Mississippi River. The Lewis and Clark expedition explored these new lands. Their journey provided valuable geographic information. It also established relations with Native American tribes. However, expansion often came at a great cost. It led to the displacement of Native Americans. Their ancestral lands were taken. The concept of manifest destiny emerged. It was the belief that American expansion across the continent was justified and inevitable. This ideology fueled westward movement. The gold rush of 1849 in California spurred rapid migration. People flocked west seeking fortune. This influx of population accelerated statehood for California. This period of growth was often intertwined with the expansion of slavery. As new territories were added, debates raged over whether they would be free or slave states. These debates intensified sectional divisions. The Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850 attempted to balance these interests. However, they only postponed the inevitable conflict. The issue of slavery became increasingly divisive. The Dred Scott decision in 1857 further inflamed tensions. The Supreme Court ruled that enslaved people were not citizens. It also declared that Congress could not prohibit slavery in territories. This ruling was a major setback for abolitionists. It pushed the nation closer to civil war. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860 was the final trigger. Southern states began to secede from the Union. They formed the Confederate States of America. The nation was splitting apart. The issue of slavery culminated in the Civil War. This was a brutal conflict that tested the very fabric of the Union. It pitted brother against brother. The war lasted 4 long years. It resulted in immense loss of life. The Union victory preserved the United States. The subsequent Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 declared enslaved people in Confederate territory to be free. This transformed the goals of the war. It added a moral dimension to the fight. Following the war, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery nationwide. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship and equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment prohibited denying voting rights based on race. These amendments marked a turning point in the fight for racial equality. They laid the legal foundation for future civil rights advancements. However, the struggle for true equality would continue for generations. Reconstruction followed the war. It was an effort to rebuild the South and integrate formerly enslaved people into society. This period saw significant political and social upheaval. The promise of Reconstruction was ultimately undermined. Jim Crow laws were enacted in the South. These laws enforced racial segregation and disenfranchisement. The legacy of slavery and the Civil War continued to shape American society. The fight for civil rights would become a defining struggle of the next century. The nation grappled with its founding ideals versus its historical realities. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw the Industrial Revolution transform the American economy. New technologies and industries emerged. This led to unprecedented growth. Cities expanded rapidly as people moved for jobs. This period brought about significant social changes. It included the rise of labor movements. Workers organized to demand better wages and working conditions. The era also presented the challenges of industrial capitalism. Issues like monopolies and inequality arose. The Progressive Era sought to address these problems. Reforms were enacted to regulate industry and protect consumers. The role of government in the economy expanded. America's growing industrial power coincided with increased global involvement. The Spanish-American War in 1898 marked a shift. The U.S. acquired overseas territories. This signaled America's emergence as a world power. The nation began to play a larger role in international affairs. Its economic strength translated into global influence. The World Wars thrust the United States onto the global stage in a decisive way. The nation's involvement solidified its position as a superpower. These conflicts had profound impacts, particularly World War II, which transformed the nation. The war effort mobilized the entire country. It spurred massive industrial production. The war had a profound impact on its economy. It ended the Great Depression. It created millions of jobs. It also dramatically expanded its military. The U.S. built a powerful global military presence. Its international relations were fundamentally altered. The United States became a leader in the post-war world order. It played a key role in establishing the United Nations. It initiated the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. The Cold War with the Soviet Union defined the latter half of the 20th century. This ideological struggle influenced American foreign policy for decades. It led to proxy wars and an arms race. The Korean War and the Vietnam War were major conflicts during this era. They tested America's resolve and global commitments. These wars had significant domestic consequences. The space race was another aspect of the Cold War competition. The U.S. invested heavily in science and technology. Landing on the moon in 1969 was a major achievement. The Cold War shaped American society in many ways. It led to increased military spending. It fueled fears of communism at home. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War. The United States emerged as the sole superpower. This new global landscape presented new challenges and opportunities. The mid-20th century witnessed the rise of the civil rights movement. This movement was fueled by the courage and determination of activists. They challenged racial segregation and discrimination. Through protests, boycotts, and legal challenges, they demanded equality. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. inspired millions. Their efforts brought national attention to racial injustice. The movement led to landmark legislation. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were passed. These laws outlawed segregation and protected voting rights. These achievements significantly advanced the cause of equality and justice. They dismantled legal segregation. They opened doors for African Americans in education, employment, and politics. The civil rights movement inspired other social movements. The women's rights movement gained momentum. The LGBTQ+ rights movement began to organize. The environmental movement also emerged. Concerns about pollution and conservation grew. These movements sought to expand rights and address societal issues. The late 20th century saw significant technological advancements. The rise of the internet and personal computers transformed communication and commerce. This digital revolution continues to shape modern life. Globalization increased interconnectedness between nations. Economic policies shifted. Debates over trade and outsourcing became prominent. Political polarization grew in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Divisions over social issues, economic policy, and the role of government deepened. The media landscape fragmented. The nation faced new challenges abroad. The rise of international terrorism became a major concern. Conflicts in the Middle East drew American involvement. Our exploration concludes with the 9/11 terrorist attacks. This was a defining moment in recent American history. The attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon shocked the nation. 9/11 reshaped American foreign policy. The U.S. launched the War on Terror. Military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq followed. The attacks also reshaped national security. New government agencies were created. Surveillance measures were increased. The events of 9/11 left a lasting impact on the nation's identity. They fostered a sense of vulnerability. They also highlighted American resilience. The attacks and their aftermath continue to influence America's place in the world. Debates over civil liberties, foreign intervention, and national identity persist. The post-9/11 era is still unfolding. These 20 pivotal events, from the fight for independence to the challenges of the modern age, tell the story of a nation in constant flux. They reveal the struggles, the progress, and the enduring ideals that continue to shape the American experiment. Understanding these moments is essential to understanding the United States today.